How y'all doing today? My name is Roshan. I am the organizing director with the Pure Justice Organization. I am sitting here with Brother Mack. Brother Mack, what neighborhood do you represent?
I represent the Sunnyside neighborhood.
Okay. And the conversation we will have today is around police accountability, community safety. I have just a few questions for you, Brother Mack. So the first question, jumping right into it, in your opinion, does the police keep communities safe?
In my opinion, police do not keep communities safe. Police are generally utilized for the protection of property more so than they are for the protection of people. And that goes back to, if we look throughout history, in the fact that the primary function of police have been the protection of property, and the fact that African American Black folk were not considered to be persons until way later in the history of this country. We were initially considered to be property. That also leads to why we have had a history with police not fully protecting us, because they don't see our humanity as being equal to white people and to other people. They view us as property. And because they view us from a negative lens, because we've been portrayed as such, both through policy as well as other depictions, it has led to that this institution does not protect us.
Okay. In your personal life experiences, whether verbal or physical, have you ever been abused by law enforcement?
In my personal experience, I have had abuses from law enforcement, in terms of verbally, being told that you can't be in certain places, being stopped incorrectly for any number of reasons because they feel that Black people shouldn't be in that particular neighborhood. Also, one thing that I think that we don't think about is the fact that early on, especially through our K through 12 education, we're often forced to be in interacting with police through assemblies, through programs such as DARE and things of that nature. And those are not programs in which children have the right to consent to being in the presence of law enforcement. It is kind of forced onto us, and therefore also what is forced onto us is the view that they want us to have of law enforcement. So they'll force us into an interaction that suggests that law enforcement is positive, but that may go contrary to our own personal experiences. And then we're not allowed to then counteract that or, negate that. And then that also, in a sense, is its own type of harm, in that you're now negating and gaslighting my experiences and my Black body in favor, once again, of this institution, and that also is harmful.
Those were some great points, Brother Mack. Um, when you experienced verbal abuse from law enforcement, how did you handle that abuse? And who did you report it to, if anyone?
I'm not going to lie, I froze, because in those situations, you're often just thinking, I need to get out of this situation alive. So instead of, and to be perfectly honest, in just my nature, I'm not someone who does a lot of that kind of verbal back and forth. That's just not in me. But once again, when you're dealing with someone who has legal authority to be able to do anything, once again, you're thinking from the perspective, I just want to get out of this situation alive. And so I wouldn't, combat it with, any type of verbal attack or, the most I would probably do would just assert, my right to, be in the space that I'm in or having First Amendment rights. But outside of that is mostly get out alive. In terms of who to report it to be honest, most of the situations I never reported, because who are you going to report it to that has an objective perspective, or an objective that is about holding police accountable? I will say that we now have an Office of Police Accountability that I would report incidents like that to. But prior to that, who else would you report it to? Because if you report it to law enforcement, how serious is law enforcement going to check themselves? If you want to report it to an attorney or someone of that nature, then you have to deal with the financial barriers related to that. And then also, you're probably still thinking about the potential repercussions that could happen if you speak out and report. Now, we know we want people to do that, and it requires a lot of bravery. But at the same time, I'm never going to hold anyone against thinking about preserving their life and therefore not reporting, because we also have to think about that.
You're right. You actually took me into my next question. But before I go into the next question, I just want to touch about the financial side. If you do want to take it to a lawyer, we all don't have the means.
Correct.
And it could be pretty expensive to hire a lawyer to do a job for you.
Mhm.
But going into the next question, which you kind of touched on, was do you believe reporting police abuse to police is an effective way to seek justice? And do you think law enforcement is capable of fixing internal issues?
Can you repeat the first part of your question once again?
Okay. Do you believe reporting police abuse it do you believe reporting police abuse to police is an effective way to seek justice? And do you think law enforcement is capable of fixing internal issues?
So the reason why I asked for the repeat of the question is because I think it is possible. I don't think it's currently happening, which are two very different things. First and foremost, I think it could be possible to report incidences of police violence, incidences of police misconduct to police, and then police being able to hold themselves accountable. However, I do not think and have not experienced or seen a lot of those incidences in which police fix themselves. So therefore, it breeds distrust in that system. Often what I have seen is it gets reported and then nothing happens. Or it gets reported and the most that ever happens is maybe a suspension with pay. So therefore, what is really correcting the behavior? So what I would say is that if law enforcement wants us to believe in that system, then they need to produce results that suggest that that is an actual avenue that could happen and that could take place. Often, this is one of the reasons for why people call for the dismantling of the police system, because it is based off of a history and a past of behaviors of law enforcement protecting itself. If we therefore have a new system that is not based in that history, not based in that past, there's probably more than likely going to be a better belief in that new system that it can hold itself accountable. But we need evidence to really suggest that police are going to uphold themselves, because we don't see that happening.
Right. If you could prevent law enforcement from doing one thing, what would that be?
That is a very good question, and it's very hard, to be honest, to drill it down to one thing. For me, in my personal opinion, one thing that I would really like for law enforcement not to be able to have the ability to do currently is to be the only avenue that stops individuals, if that makes sense. In that we see with traffic stops, we get disproportionately stopped in that situation. When it then is made the decision of who gets incarcerated because of an incident, is once again disproportionate that it is Black individuals who are going to end up incarcerated rather than other counterparts. So inherently, these show a racial discrimination in just stops. We also have, we haven't brought up stop and frisk. Stop and frisk is still a practice that is used, and once again, disproportionately used against Black people. So for me, that's one of the things that I wish I could stop, is the ability to just stop us, because that then has its own trickle down effects in terms of how our bodies and our personhood is treated. You don't get that right to be able to do that until you can demonstrate that it is being done on an equal playing field.
Thank you for that. So, could we improve community safety by investing in our community need?
Absolutely. The number one reason for why we have any number of issues related to safety, related to criminality, it all comes from a place of lack. What we need to do is better invest and better solve the problem of lack. So that means making sure that we actually have affordable housing. And when we say affordable, we're talking about affordable at the level of minimum wage, not from any other marker, but from minimum wage. You should be able to afford a clean, safe dwelling at the level of minimum wage. If you solve for that, then you solve for individuals not feeling like they have to go through some other alternative in order to pay their bills, protect their families, and secure a life for themselves. That's another reason for why we have to tackle displaced individuals and homelessness, because once again, those individuals should have the right to be in safe, clean dwellings that give them a sense of pride in themselves and give them a sense of hope and give them a sense of protecting the community. Because one of the reasons for why we see recidivism is in individuals not feeling like their lives matter. They don't have a sense of dignity. They don't have a sense of protecting other individuals because they have already felt thrown away by society, by their community. So in that feeling of, oh, my life does not matter, I then don't feel the need to care about other individuals. Well, if we put in that care by addressing homeless and displaced individuals, addressing food deserts, addressing employment barriers, addressing affordable housing, those things will foster a sense of community caring for community, which could be the biggest thing to protect us, is if we really truly demonstrate we care about one another.
Wow. I love that. You know, addressing the vulnerabilities of the communities. When you're vulnerable, you get creative, you do things that may be against the law. And I always say one of the best and easiest ways to have somebody do something against the law, knowing it's a strong possibility they may get caught, is to squeeze them for as much as you can squeeze them for. You under-resource them, then you over-police them. Now, you touched on a few things of displacement, homelessness, housing, you know, food deserts, you know. Um, is there or are there any other resources you would say people need in order to create safe communities?
First and foremost, we need the ability for everyone to have a job that is providing an affordable wage and also providing dignity in their work. We also need to eliminate education barriers. So making it easier for individuals to have access to a quality K through 12 education, and then also having the opportunity to have quality education post-secondary if they want it. We need to eliminate the barriers in, once again, as I mentioned, housing. We need to ban the box in every single incident. If you have paid your debt, quote unquote, to society, that should be the end of it. It should not be a lifelong life sentence for something you did in the past for a variety of reasons. And now you don't have really the fullest ability to explain your situation, to show how you have gotten better. None of those things generally are presented because automatically that box bans you out. And we've got to change that because once again, it goes back to us devaluing each other and suggesting that an individual, because of a mistake, does not have the right to redemption and doesn't have the right to a fruitful and bountiful life after their circumstance.
I want to add a mistake, false accusation, a mishap, like, and I know, I'm not the one answering the questions here, but I believe we can't forget that every institution, and I do mean every institution we interact with on a daily basis has a base out of white supremacy.
Mhm.
So you don't always necessarily have to make a mistake in order to get in trouble or be pulled into a situation to where you're forced to be punished or sign a plea deal or lose something at trial. A lot of times when we get there to that place in that courtroom trying to figure out how to get out of it, the only thing we need in order to make a way out, sometimes outside of a different skin color, is some financial resources that we don't have because we was born into generational poverty. But I don't want to derail this conversation. I have one more question for you.
Absolutely.
If you were to redefine community safety, what would it look like to you?
I would redefine community safety as community valuation. And what I mean by that is, once again, how are we supporting our communities? How are we protecting our communities? Because once again, if we value community, we're going to see those investments in the community. That's going to make the community safe. What we don't see currently is an equal valuation of all communities. That's why we then see disproportionate incidences of crime in certain communities versus others, because it's not just about the behavior of the individuals within that community. It's also about the investment that is being placed into that community by so many other organizations and entities. So for me, that would be the thing that we change it to, is how are we ensuring that all of our communities are being equally valued and getting the resources that they need, and also the fullest ability for all of their citizens to be able to be and breathe.
I thank you very much for that. Thank you very much, Brother Mack. It's been a pleasure, you sitting here talking to me this morning. But until next time, enjoy the rest of your day, brother.
Thank you so much.